David Dene is with us. I've got two guests tonight. David Dene is way over in Spain at god-awful time there. It's 4 a.m. God bless his soul that he's with us. So, David, how are you doing?
Doing really well, thanks, James. I've been having a good evening, catching up on emails, and I've got a good strong cup of coffee here, and I'm really well, thank you.
Well, actually, James is the other guest, David. I'm Brian.
Brian, I'm sorry, it must be too early in the morning.
Hey, it's okay. I make mistakes with names all the time. And James McCanney, Tier 1 scientist, the man who is... I was just telling David offline about how what a capable person this man is. He's a top-ranked scientist, physicist, mathematician, an inventor, an engineer. I mean, he wears all the hats from the science world. James, how you doing?
All at the same time, too, Brian. I'm one of those guys you see on the street with the visors sticking out in all directions.
James, and you also told me something I was blown away. Despite the fact that you're an amazing scientific mind, you actually also used to play in a band?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I worked my way through college. The 16-piece stage band was one of the bands, doing the old Woody Herman, the Stan Kenton, all of the music like that. I played the upright bass, by the way, and I learned concert bass with the bow. And so, at any rate, then the piano, drum, and myself had a trio, and we played a lot. And so, and I goofed around with piano and things like that. But, the string-based, upright string bass was my professional instrument, you might say.
Amazing. I mean, so many talents. It's hard to fathom that someone could be as talented as you, James. But I'm really glad that you're such a regular participant in my show, and you're a hot commodity out there. You were at 4 hours on other shows today already.
Yes. Yeah, this will be 6 when I get done with this. Usually doesn't happen. I used to do a lot of radio. Going back in history, I'd do 3-hour shows and sometimes a couple a day, but I've kind of cut back. But yeah, today everything just like fell in place, and I got called in the middle of the afternoon to do another show, which I didn't expect. And so, tally up the 6 hours today.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be on shows every day, probably 8 hours a day if you wanted. And you also have your own radio show, right? It's on. Tell the listener where your radio show can be found.
Tomorrow evening, Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Central Time. That's U.S. Central Time. WWCR Shortwave Powerhouse out of Nashville, Tennessee. It's a 1-hour show per week, and it's called the James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroads. Then it re-airs 10 p.m. Friday night and 3 a.m. Saturday morning from WTWW, also out of Nashville. And then it also airs on satellite in the Western Hemisphere. And then there's a Hotbird satellite that covers the North Africa, Europe, and Mideast market 3 times on Saturday. So, and then the archives are on my webpage. So you can listen. A lot of people listen to the archives on my webpage.
Yeah, I think more people pick up my podcast than actually listen to me live. So I mean, in this new on-demand age, right? Why pick a time? Just go with the flow, and when you have an extra hour, just throw on a podcast to somebody you know. And that's why the archives here are quite popular, and a lot of people subscribe for $5 a month. So I think it's great. It's a great way to support the station too. So. And David,
yeah,
the reason I brought you guys together is because, I'm not in a position right now where I can actually live in an eco-village or do anything too radical. I've got young kids, I'm living kind of mainstream here in a lot of ways, but I do feel that the need to bring great minds together, and you and James, I consider you both friends, and I consider you to have great minds and great aspirations, and you've both already done so many good things for the planet.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
Yes, that's great, Brian. And that's there are people that do that. They are organizers, and they make things happen. Bring the right people together, and Absolutely.
Networking.
Yeah.
Really networking.
But I wanted to, before we get into those sort of issues, I wanted to let people know more about. Dave's been on my show quite a few times too, but you guys have never been on together before, so this is a first. This is kind of reminds me of the show we had when I had you on with Alberto Ruz. Now, Alberto Ruz is a fellow eco-villager who lives in Mexico, and James has met Alberto, 4 times now we've done shows together?
Somewhere up there. Yeah,
yes,
quite a few.
4 times. And Alberto and David have a similar life path, certainly not identical. But David's quite one heck of a good organizer too. Why don't you share with the audience what you've been doing lately, David?
Well, this evening, for instance, we had a conference call with our team where we're looking to introduce rights of nature into the European Parliament as law to protect nature here in Europe, an actual fact, for the world. So we've been looking at, basically our ground of being and how we're going to work, and looking at organizational techniques to bring 28 countries together to get 1 million votes to spur on the European Commission to start to look after our nature. And for myself here, we're faced with really quite a catastrophe in terms of water, because we live in a semi-arid zone, very close to desert climate. And for money, we've got agricultural industry on our doorstep with super intensive olive plantations, taking all the water from the aquifer, which supplies us with water in our village and also other villages downstream. So I've been working now for about 16 months, and because of contacts I've got through the Rights of Nature group, we've been able to move our case through the European Union and right up to the level of the United Nations Special Rapporteurship on the fundamental human right to a safe environment. And we've had to go this way because the European Commission, their directives really don't seem to have teeth in the face of the situation which we're in, which is it's actually a corrupt situation, but for the European Union, I call it incompetence. And we have this all over Spain, and the reply I get back from the European Union for the directives they have for us, which is a place of special community interest, special protection for birds, special protection for habitat, and the protections don't work. So we're saying, hey, we've got to have rights for nature, otherwise we won't have any left, because money has basically subverted justice right the way up to the level, as far as I've found, to the level of the United Nations human rights. So that's where I've been and still am. We've got a case running with the Petitions Committee in the European Union, and the Special Rapporteur has taken us on at the United Nations level, and we're working with the local Podemos parliamentary group here to push our case in the government of Andalusia. And we've just done a Spanish national TV broadcast, or we've just had the film made for a documentary on what's happening here. So we're moving, we're pushing hard, we've got high morale, and we're in a bit of a tricky situation, is what we'd say in England. Faced with no water, which means no water, very hard to live here. So that's a quick update on what I'm up to.
I'm just curious about this conference call you had with the Rights of Nature group. Was Mumta Ito in on that call?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she's
Great.
well, and she's got the Green Party of Scotland to take on Rights of Nature as part of their manifesto for the next general election. So that's really a big plus.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're really, we're going well, and I think, when we come from our hearts and we really care for nature and we really understand, then we all have something to bring, something to give.
Well, is there any underground water there at all?
Well, there is, James. Yeah, it's a big aquifer. It's like an underground basin full of water, and it extends over 150 square kilometers, and it provides water for 35,000 people. And where I'm living is what's known as a testimonial spring, And it is apparently pretty much unique. You know, they just aren't like this. But this one is a testimonial spring to the level of water in the aquifer. And at the top end, it's gone dry. So I've been doing presentations in the local town and raising a bit of action here as well, explaining to people that this is a testimonial spring, and the testament is we're running out of water. And people are really beginning to get it now. So we're moving more on the national level as well as the European Commission level and as well as the level of the United Nations in Geneva. So it's a great education for me, and I would say a learning for all of us about, you know, how good or bad our laws are, and do our laws really work, you know, for the protection of nature. And the answer is basically not very well. So we go
in California, David, they had a very similar situation with drought for over 2 years. And typically it rains, and then the aquifers and the reservoirs fill up, and then they deplete it. You know, it's a seasonal thing, and then they get runoff from the melt in the mountains, the seasonal runoff from that also. But after 2 years of drought, the farmers in the valley have been drilling deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's the question of who can afford to keep drilling deeper. And literally, they got down to the bottom of the aquifer in the San Fernando Valley, which is about a fifth of the food of the United States comes from that valley. And there again, it's just water rights, who can drill, who can get the most water, and it's money, politics, So now they have severe rationing because they didn't guard the water, and laws where you can be arrested if you take a glass of water illegally.
Really?
That's the condition in California. Yeah, it's not good, but
that's very serious. Yeah. I mean, the thing is to understand, when we have no water, we have no life. And it seems we have to get to a catastrophic state before people realize, that water is the most precious thing that we have. Amazing, isn't it?
Now, when they water the olive trees, do they use drip? Do they use any conservative type of irrigation, or do they just?
They use drip irrigation. They have, though, 1,800 trees per hectare. So for every 2 acres, round about 1,800 trees. And so really they use a lot of water. It's between 5,000 and 6,000 tons per year per hectare, which brings us, I reckon, to about 500% overexploitation of the aquifer, which is a disaster.
Yeah, it's going to be dry in how long do you think, Dave? A couple more years? It'll be completely
dry? We haven't really got more than a year left. It's been raining a little bit, thanks be to God. We've also had a drought a bit like California for the last 2 years, with annual rainfall less than 200 millimeters, which is really a desert climate. So we've been watching vegetation die back, boreholes going dry. Water's delivered to all the outlying villages here because the boreholes are dry. So it's an extraordinary situation. And yet, morale is high. We keep on going, and we live in a beautiful place. So, we keep ever onwards, is what I say.
How far are you from the Mediterranean?
I'm 35 kilometers from the east coast of Spain, and about 50 kilometers going down to the south. I'm really on the edge corner of the southeast of Spain. We can jump over to Morocco very easily, to Melilla, for instance. So on the edge. I'm on the edge.
Oh, okay. You say the southeast. East, do you really mean the southwest? I'm trying to picture
No, I really mean the southeast. It's a place almost nobody knows. The province of Andalusia is called Almeria, famous for vegetables. We export vegetables all over Europe using groundwater, once again.
And greenhouses, right, David? A lot of greenhouses.
About 35,000 hectares of greenhouses. I mean, unbelievable. Oh, wow. It looks like a sea of plastic, which it is.
Now, is this an area called near Catalana? Is that what the name is? Or it's a region?
Coming south, James. We're in the area known as Andalusia.
Okay.
It's the south end of Spain. Andalusia extends through to Cadiz on the west coast, and then right the way across to Almeria on the east coast. Many different climates, snow, rivers, natural parks, and we're the desert bit, where the spaghetti westerns were made. Like Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and these sort of movies. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
is that right?
That's our
They
terrain.
were made in the U.S. This is one of the amazing facts. They were made in Spain.
Yeah, they're made in my neighborhood. Wow. Yeah, and actually, where our second eco village is, it's exactly where those films were filmed. It's rough old desert. It's great.
Yeah, and all the Mexicans were actually Spanish people, right?
Yeah, the Spanish gypsies. They're great. They love it. Up on the horses and off we go.
Well, wasn't Dr. Zhivago also filmed in the Pyrenees?
Could well been. That other old movie, Lawrence of Arabia. That was filmed all around here as well. Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is it still an active area for movie making? David?
Yeah, the most recent was Exodus. That was a massive production. And that was the last one made. I think it was Exodus. I've performed as a movie extra in I think 5 or 6 films now. It's always quite amusing. I got a talking part in the last one.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah, no, really. It was a movie about a teacher of Spanish who came down from Albacete to come and visit John Lennon's film set when he was filming in Tabernas, which is where we are. So I took the role of being the director of the John Lennon movie and introducing the teacher to John Lennon. So that was a bit of fun. Paid me $100. That was okay. Yeah. So life is fun. Yeah, it's very varied. And also living in an eco village, of course, everything is down to us to fix and to sort, and it's a very pleasant sense of responsibility coupled with an amazing sense of freedom. Very, very nice place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Well, James is doing the same thing you're doing, but he does it solo.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to be rather busy. I think we've got 12 people in the house at the moment from Czech Republic, Romania, Germany, Spain, a complete mixture of people. And so it's a constantly evolving happening around my house. I've had an open house for 17 years now.
Well, I keep telling James that the eco-village, the people that are involved in living in eco-villages are generally extremely bright. They're usually doing good stuff for the planet, not just for themselves and the people in their direct area, but usually working outside of their area to improve things, like you're doing the Rights of Nature movement. And I thought it was just such a cool thing, a synergy, and this is why I introduced him to Alberto Ruz, and now I want him to meet you too, because some of his ideas and his inventions, I think, would be very good for the eco-village movement. There's 2 things that I have in mind, and James can certainly bring up others, but I just found out about this one like 10 minutes ago before the show, is this new software package. But do you want to talk about your wing wheel or your new software, James?
Let's talk about the wing generator first. Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, well, basically, just to give you some background about, more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I was asked to do an efficiency study for the power companies, and the power companies tend to span many states, and so is an overall efficiency of their system. And so I did that, and I was horrified. I was horrified that 75% of the energy from nuclear or coal just goes right up the stack, and it goes out into a cooling region, or usually a river or something like that. But that enormous amount of heat is just waste right from the beginning. Then 75%. If you look at it's just the Carnot cycle is officially like 34%. That's at absolute maximum efficiency. for a heat engine.
Okay.
Then the conversion to electricity, you lose another 5%. And then you put it on the power lines, and every time you convert it or change voltages or whatever you do, you lose some. And then once you get to the lower voltages for local distribution, that's quite costly. And then you bring it into the house and then, say, put it through, especially back then it was the old incandescent light bulbs, which were about 5% efficient. About 95% of the energy went away as heat. And so, and then the two big sources of or consumers of electricity were lighting, which was about 1/3 of the national electric budget, and then the other 1/3 was three-phase motors. So anyway, I did this, and at the tail end, they said, "By the way, why don't you give us some kind of analysis on this upcoming burgeoning alternative energy business, which primarily included solar and the three-blade wind generators?" And so I started looking at that, and now like what you're doing, you have abundant sun, but the rest of the world is really lacking. And so what I realized is that the primary thing, solar and the three-blade wind generators that you see scattered throughout the countryside, could not ever possibly replace the central power companies. And that was the main conclusion. And so I got to thinking that what is, for a worldwide power solution, first of all, how could you replace the central power company? And it seemed like also almost an insurmountable task, because when we talk about alternative energy, it really implies that it's something like a Band-Aid, but it'll never, ever work, on a large scale. So I looked at solar, and then I looked at wind, and even though we actually get more solar energy per day than wind energy on a worldwide basis, solar is only available for 4 hours of a day. And then at peak time, you get 100%. But as you get off to the afternoon or mornings, you're dropping off. So literally the industry multiplication factor is 4 hours. You take the, oh boy, we're already out of a half hour.
Yeah, we're coming up to a break, folks, and we'll be back in a few minutes with more of James McCanney and Dave Dene on I Am Nature. Welcome back to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter. We have two very engaging guests this evening, James McCanney and David Dene. And before the break, we were chatting about James's wing wheel electric generator. You want to pick it up, James?
Yeah. Excuse me. I'll make this story rather short. But so what I did is I realized that sun, because of winter and many places in the world, in fact, some of the largest populations in the world spend 6 months in winter, in the northern hemisphere. So I didn't consider solar something that could answer the question, can it replace the central power companies on a worldwide scale? And also replace petrol as a use for automobile power. Can we get enough power, which is a big problem today? This is part of my study, is that, say, if everybody went out and bought an electric car, the electric power companies could not deliver enough electric power to fuel them. In other words, they couldn't replace gasoline or diesel. So at any rate, then I turned to wind, and I said, okay, there's plenty of wind. It blows day and night, winter, summer, rain or shine. So wind is the only possibility of a quantity energy source. And
getting a bit of echo, James.
Oh, okay. And so anyway, what I did is I started designing from the ground up. And this goes back to my engineering history of writing what you call a functional specification. When you go into, say, an engineering effort, you don't draw pictures or you don't do anything. You write down, what does this thing have to do? And then you start designing the product, and that's very rarely done anymore today. People come up with an idea, they draw a picture of it, and then off it goes. And so anyway, some of the functional specifications is one of these units has to replace a major power company central power unit, like a 500 megawatt nuclear power plant or a 500 megawatt to 1 gigawatt coal burning power plant. And so this is a big order. So these things have to be very big. They have to be very efficient at capturing energy from the wind. And so I made some major discoveries about capturing energy from the wind. And the wing generator is the end result. We can make these large 1,000-foot diameter wing generators that will literally replace 1 or 2 nuclear power plants. And then I had to come up with an energy distribution system that would use our current grid. And it's basically distributed energy. In other words, you have wing generators in locales where you have good wind. You dump the energy onto the grid. The grid distributes the energy, but the key point is that in the current situation, the central power company controls the voltage. In my system, with the wing generators replacing the central power plants, the voltage is controlled at the local environment, just like, David, you do with your solar cells. So at any rate, you can have, say, a day without too much wind, or you can have a day with excess wind, and it doesn't matter. Your voltage may ride above normal voltage or may drop below. But ultimately, the voltage for the house end user is controlled at the house. And so all of these things, so it's a whole worldwide power system, basically. And I calculated that with 3,000 of these devices, we could power the world, and with another 1,000 or so, we could get most of the world onto electric cars, all from wind power. And so this is something that nobody has ever done. The other thing I noticed when I did my study is that the companies supporting solar and especially the wind, three-blade wind generators, were companies like General Electric or Siemens, who had a big investment in nuclear power. So I saw a big conflict of interest, and in that the designs that were out there could never be scaled up to the point where they would replace the central power company. So anyway, that's kind of the short version. But it's the first commercial model of the wing generator is soon to be on the market. It's a 12-meter model, and it would run between 10 and 20 kilowatts continuously, and power sufficient for a small eco-village, a large ranch, the town at the end of the power line that's out in a third world country, etc.
Yeah. That's very interesting, because the present wind turbines, I think we're talking about 5 megawatts of the big ones. Would that be right?
Yeah, but really the available ones are the Siemens 2.2 or 2.6, I think now, megawatts. The 5 kilowatts, they have actually built them, but they're really not practical. I don't think you're going to see many of them. Okay,
yeah. We have quite a lot around us, which are they're probably the 2.5s then, because we have a lot of wind. Sounds like your model is vastly more effective. You've got a 12-meter diameter, and you're producing how many kilowatts again? Megawatts? Quite a lot.
No, it'd be about 20 kilowatts, but that's on the low end.
Okay.
We're until we actually get them in the field and start getting field test results, I'm keeping the specifications on the low end.
Got it. But, I'm with you, James. Yeah.
But the thing about these is that with practically with the three-blade wind generator, they're probably not going to go over 5 megawatts, and they're only about 10 to 15% efficient. And so you're really, on a 5 megawatt, you're only running around 500 kilowatts.
Got it.
And so it's not much for that huge investment. And what I did is I built something extremely efficient, extremely lightweight, and something that'll last 100 years, very low maintenance, and but very efficient. And so so with these, I'm expecting we're going to get up well over the 500 megawatt range for one installation.
Brilliant.
With the three-blade wind generators, using the 1.5 megawatt model, I calculated that to come close to just the electric usage worldwide, you would have to build 77 million of them.
Wow, and, too many.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
David, part of the problem, James, I could jump in here. The cost,
Sure.
like we've done this in Canada, we did some retrofitting here in my province of Ontario, and they spent. I'm not sure what the breakdown is, but I think it's about 50-50 between wind and solar. And this is the worst place on earth for solar. We're so far north.
Okay,
it's probably only good here for 2 hours a day. That's probably in the summer. I mean, what a waste of money. And then and both programs are heavily subsidized by the taxpayer,
yes.
Right? So the problem with these systems is that they may be effective at some point, but before you even get close to meeting the needs in a green fashion, in a healthy for the planet fashion, everybody's broke.
Yeah.
They wouldn't exist if it weren't for the subsidies. But the other thing is, you still need that central power company. And even if they brag some places like, oh, we had 80% of our electric needs from wind. Like in the Netherlands, they had 100% one day, but the next day they had zero.
Yeah. I read the same report. Yeah.
And so what you need is a system where you have distributed large-scale wind generators, and that's why I call it a wing generator, because I separate it from the old-style wind generators. And literally, when you see it, it's a big system of wings connected in a hub, and very efficient at extracting the energy. The other thing about my model is they rotate very slowly. They're not designed to spin fast, so they're not ecological. They don't create high energy noise. They don't create high EMF. They don't kill birds.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can scale them up. The biggest the three-blade wind generators will become, if they install many bays, would be a 5 megawatt. And when you see, I've got a scale drawing where that 5 megawatt would be next to the large wing generator, and the wing generator just dwarfs it. And you look at it and you go, oh my goodness. The other problem with the three-blade wind generators is they're tremendously inefficient because you can't get something that big to spin fast. And so most of the air just blows right through them.
Good point. Yeah, I get you. Yeah. I had a small wind turbine on my roof, like three-blade. A lot of, I think, what we call wind shear, because I'm in a valley, and therefore the wind comes from all different directions, and the wind just blows out of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
the small generators tend to be rather efficient when you get down to that size, under 10 feet in diameter, because the blades can spin very fast. And because they spin fast, one blade cuts behind the other blade in the air, and so not much air is passing before the next blade comes around and catches the air again. But with the big wind generators, the three blades, you just can't make them spin fast. They'd fly apart. They can't take the stress. And so literally the wind is just blowing right through them, in spite of whatever efficiency claims that they make. But wind is there. I mean, it's available aplenty. And also it's very ecological, because you take the wind, you take the energy, you use it, whatever you use the energy for, it comes off as heat, which creates more wind. And so it's a very efficient process, very natural.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes good sense. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So anyway,
like a giant Ferris wheel.
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely. And I've got a video on my webpage, Brian. If you could text my webpage, and on the left-hand side, maybe during break, we could click on that, David, and take a look at it.
Yeah, brilliant.
But the crowdfunding effort ended August 3rd, And that was mildly successful, but the commercialization is happening right now. And the 12-meter model should be on the market soon.
That's great, James. What sort of price are you looking at?
We're still not sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm estimating under $60,000.
Okay.
Now, and the thing about the wind generator, since it runs day and night, your battery pack does not have to be as big. So you have a big savings in the battery pack because you're just using it more or less as a buffer.
Yeah.
And so, but compared to solar, it's very economical.
Yeah. Sounds great.
And of course, all the products used in solar use a lot of energy to create. Plus, you've got all this depleted mica and other products that have to be recycled or buried or something. It's not as long. It's not as resilient a technology as the wing wheel.
Yeah.
One of the things about the wing generator is that it has no moving parts. It's like a jet engine. It only has bearings, so it has no moving parts.
Okay. Well, so that's it's got to be good.
Designed to last. I'm hoping to get 20 to 50 years out of one of these things without major repair.
Brilliant. What about the actual generation of the electricity? You've got generating AC current, I reckon. Yeah, must be. Or not?
Yes.
AC.
Yeah, in the actual power head, what you do is you generate AC, you convert it to DC, and then you run it through an inverter to get the exact voltage you want.
Okay. Is your distribution going to be DC or AC to households?
It can be either. And that's one of the things I'm designing into is it'll be flexible depending on the application. It could be either high voltage AC, low voltage AC, or DC.
Okay. Yeah, plenty of options.
Yeah, because a lot of people building new today, especially ecologically minded people, could use DC because of the LED lighting. There's a lot of very good low voltage products. The problem is wiring. You have to be very careful about wiring because DC takes very heavy wiring, and so there's an extra cost there. But to retrofit everything that's out there, it'd be impossible to retrofit houses to DC.
Too much, and also expensive on copper.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have that much copper. The power companies actually use aluminum a lot, except in their very high-end transport. Yeah. But they use a lot of aluminum wiring because it's available.
Yeah, for sure.
And cheaper.
I use 5-watt LEDs. And I run them off the 230, really because of the wiring sizes. I just keep the 230 all through.
Mm-hmm.
Works well.
Yeah, and then what, you have a converter at the local where the lighting is?
Yeah, I'm running through maximum power point trackers, which brings me in at a high voltage, and then the charge controller measures exactly what the battery needs, so we can get very fine increments of voltage going into the batteries. And then I go through a 4 kilowatt inverter, which takes 24 volts up to 230 AC. And that'll give me a good surge of 9 kilowatts if I need. So I've used the system to build my house, or build my second house. I had this one up and running. Very nice feeling to be free of electricity charges.
Oh yeah, I know. That's what I do too. Have been the last two places I've lived for periods of time, basically without electric bills.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah. The previous place I had a wind generator, electric or a gas generator that I converted to propane. That was my backup, and then a bank of basically 12-volt batteries that were like, 125 amp hour each. Just it was just a house, but I did interviews. I used satellite internet. So I was a complete autonomous entity. I didn't have any utilities of any kind.
That's great. That's exactly where we are here. It's lovely. Love it. We have no pipes, no tubes. Yeah, we're completely off grid. We have no pipes, no tubes, no wires. I've got a broadband node up on the mountain, which we power with a solar panel and a battery. Works really well.
David, what percentage of eco-villages, James and I were chatting about this before, it's our understanding that most eco-villages are not off-grid.
I would say the majority are not off-grid. I would think you're right on that, James. Yeah. Brian, rather. Yeah.
Well,
I've been up to Bindhorn, for instance, up in Scotland, and that eco-village has been going for, must be about 40 years now. They generate their electricity with wind turbines, and they sell the electricity back to the grid, and they pay for electricity off the grid, which is, okay, well, I guess that's the way it goes. An aware community, a mature eco-village with an amazing number of conferences happening all the time. Certainly the eco-village network seems to include a lot of people who are prepared to step out of the normal framework of life and investigate really how it is to live. I think that's what it's about. I mean, here in this village, we put on workshops for gardening, for building stoves, for various forms of appropriate technology, healing, but they're very eclectic communities. I think that would be a fair way of describing the eco-village network. People coming together because we look for something different. And also, definitely, in my case, look for a sense of freedom and a place where we can create together. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I was doing a radio show earlier today, and I was talking about the back to the land movement in the 60s. And that was an interesting time. But I think what's going on today is quite a bit different because besides simply trying to live a simpler lifestyle with less of a carbon footprint, etc., the people really want to pursue higher levels of living, and maintain art forms, science, education, communication, social structures that are because our social structures in average society has been so destroyed that people just want to get away from that. But the other thing, I think that possibly even ourselves underestimate the number of people that have simply stepped off the modern bus and gone away. And I think it's in the maybe 20 to 50 million people that have done this and more every day. And as a result, I'd say that the global climate change that the government is promoting for control and carbon tax and everything else has backfired on them because I think they thought they had everybody trapped and that you would have to live in society the way it was with less water, much more control of water, much more control of resources. And so what people just stepped aside and said, we don't need all those resources. We don't need all of this stuff. We just want to be happy and left alone. And as a result, the political systems are failing. The economic systems are failing. And as they drive the economies down, people are just going, hey, there's no future here. And they're just going away, but living a more independent lifestyle. And it's really backfiring on the people who wanted to use global climate change for control. Yeah.
Well, there certainly are a lot of bad things happening to the climate, bad things for humans and bad things for our planet. The control, well, I think it's out of control. But I think we're living in a moment of transformation of society. That's the way I see it. A lot of
Right.
green roots, shall we say? A lot of really brilliant people, brilliant young people, really looking to do something different. I have a lot of people coming through our little village here, and I find that this generation is less practical than the generation of 20 years ago, but also a generation willing to learn, and a generation who are expert at communication. They've been practicing with the smartphones for 10 years, and now we have the most amazing ability in our young people to communicate all over the world. So I'm waiting to see what's going to be the spark to really ignite this absolute necessity for change. And I think it's going to come through the younger generation. It has to. So I remain optimistic.
Yeah, I do too.
And the show, of course.
What's that, Brian?
And the show, of course. But let me just interject here, guys. Having a great conversation with the two of you, but because my role here is to try to network people and get people helping and working together in a more effective way. I'm thinking of synergies here, and you brought up an organization that I just love, Finhorn. And David, who do you think James should meet at Finhorn or chat with? Who would be good people there that James should connect with? I know Kasia because she's been on my show.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. She was president or CEO, whatever we call it, for the Eco Village Network. She's just stepped down. I'm not sure who's taken her place, but they're wonderful people. I spent some time with them in Finhorn. There's a lot going on there. I think the thing to do is to. Okay, we're on a break again. Yeah,
we're going to go to break soon. Yeah. Okay,
sure,
folks.
fine, yeah.
We'll be back soon with more of David Dene and James McCanney. I'm sure. Okay, folks, I think we're back on again. No intro.
Yeah.
That light speed bumper music again. That was it?
Well, no, just the intro doesn't come in sometimes. So,
you want me to sing? Maybe no, you don't.
Yeah, get out your bass. So you're back, folks, with I Am Nature. Brian Porter, your host, with guest James McCanney and David Dene. And this is the time of my show when I usually talk about the importance of supporting Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I love the archives. I think it's your best investment. We also have our seed packs. We have a donate button, but it's my humble opinion that anyone who listens to this radio station more than once a week can cough up $5, folks. I mean, I'm suggesting people donate $5 a month. You're hardly even going to notice it, but it's going to make a huge difference based upon our large listenership to the station. So please, don't forget to put in your $5 a month. And now it's back to our very interesting guest. So where do we leave off? We were talking about what was it about? The wing generator, the wing wheel, and trying to get this connected with the larger Eco Village network.
And then also, I mean, during the break, I was just jotting down about 50 things that are really being developed in this entire culture. Music, communication, travel, food, water, health, energy, education, social development, physical, spiritual, family values, agriculture, seed saving, engineering, science. That's just a short list of the collage of directions that are all being, melded into one direction, literally, as people seek to spend their years and days on this planet doing something useful and pleasant, as opposed to what society has planned for you. But central to everything that we do in modern life, whether it's in an eco-village or whatever, is energy and water. And certainly we started talking about that. So those are the two main areas that I work in. And so The one thing about the wing generator also is that it desalinization is very intensive electrically. It requires a tremendous amount of pumping to pump through the reverse osmosis filters. And it's really the only method to date that really works. Hopefully we'll come up with some better methods in the future, but excuse me, the one thing that would work is to have desalinization plants run by wing generators. Basically, once you set them up, they're free. They deliver the water for free.
Yeah.
From converting seawater into fresh water.
Well, this is one of the methods that they want to solve the problem there, right? With in this olive orchard, right? This huge.
Yeah, we do. And it's immensely expensive, and it won't solve the problem because we're undergoing the extraction of a non-renewable resource, because the water in that aquifer is like millions of years old, and it just doesn't renew. So it's like mining, once it's gone, it's gone. So we have 120.
Well, David, let me clarify. What I'm suggesting is that they leave the aquifer alone, and they develop a way of pumping desalinated water up to the orchard. That would be the solution.
Well, yeah. Basically, we have it. We have pipes being built now from a town called Carboneras. We have 120,000 solar panels feeding 28 megawatts down into Carboneras to provide the desalinated water. And alongside that, the additional power comes from coal-fired energy from sulfur coal from the Asturias. So it's really not too good, actually, because the marine environment becomes changed. We get excessive salination and heat. So we're providing water for the land, but on the other hand, we're changing the environment of the sea. So it's an ecological destruction on one to sustain what is unsustainable. To have agricultural, industrial agriculture in a desert zone is crazy. It really, it's not a good idea.
So you think the solution is to get rid of the orchard?
Well, what I'm asking the United Nations, particularly to do the Human Rights Department and the European Commission, is to use what's known as the precautionary principle. If something is going to be done which may affect the environment detrimentally, then the precautionary principle says check it out first. So we've got to the stage where it's check it out last, and I think we've got a good hope to close the boreholes temporarily, those which have been drilled since 2010, so we go back to an agreed overexploitation of 330% in 2010. And at least that's a point to go back to, because at the moment, our water supply has been depleted month by month. Our flow in the rivers was from April till July dropping at 10% per month. So don't have to be very mathematically sound to see we don't have much time left.
How far are you, David, from the Atlantic Ocean?
From the Atlantic, way across. We're going to be about 1,000 kilometers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, we've got the Mediterranean all around. And actually, we have protected ecosystems in the Mediterranean around the coasts. And the desalination plants are not a benefit to protected ecosystems because they change them. They just do. And we're talking about
it's a big complaint about them because they change the salination levels in the water because they really have no place to put this extra salt brine that comes out of it, right?
That's the problem.
You put it back in the water and it just creates and believe me, as bad as we're doing things on land, we're doing much worse things to the oceans and nobody even knows about it. It's not even fun. Yeah. All this shipping is destroying the oceans.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of changes this year. We've got a very big El Nino happening at the moment. Then we've got what's referred to as the blob of hot water, which has been sitting off the coast of Alaska, moving down the west coast of America. And so we've got El Nino versus blob at the moment. And if the El Nino wins, then California could get very wet. And if not, California stays dry. So interesting meteorological situations and ocean temperatures and massive anomalies occurring all over the globe. So we're in a time of change, that's for sure. And energy and water, absolutely, James. This is what counts. This is what gives us freedom.
Yeah, and oddly enough, or not oddly enough, but Forbes magazine in the year 2000, I think it was January 2000, as they crossed into the new millennia, had a picture of Bill Clinton on the cover, called him the man of the century. I'm not sure why. But the other main article in that issue was water. They said water will guide the next 1,000 years like oil guided the previous 100 years. So clearly, worldwide it's an issue. I have a book that the title is simply Water. And I go through the worldwide water control issues, and that literally all of the water in the world, all the fresh water, has been earmarked and is now under control of some kind or another. Yeah. And I also make the point that we don't have a water shortage problem. We have a water management problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you. Yeah.
But
massive overuse. Yeah.
Yeah. I was associated with some people that were doing a project, and what they started to do was develop plants that were you could grow with salt water, and they would create a green area, and once that area became green, it would start to rain. Okay. Because I think the Sahara, if I'm not mistaken, even during Roman times, the Sahara Desert was a green area. And the Romans came in and basically cut it all down and left the Sahara Desert behind. So the Sahara Desert is a man-made desert. Yeah. And so it's much more difficult to reverse the desert process, but it can be done. And I'm thinking too of the American Southwest. If we could take the runoff from the winter snow in the United States, in the northern states, and divert that into the American Southwest, then we would have a tremendous amount of water that right now gets dumped into the Gulf of Mexico, and actually is a ecological disaster because all of the farm runoff, the fertilizers go into the Gulf of Mexico, causes a major growth there, and it grows so heavily that the light cannot get in. It prevents photosynthesis down in the water, and it basically kills. It's a big dead zone. Nothing lives.
Yeah. Very, 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 very bad. Yeah, I've been reading about that too. And the Gulf of Mexico is a very serious situation there, I believe. Big dead zones. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but if you could take that water and divert it west, build canals, and then pump it using wing energy, once again, all free, have the wind do it, move that water over to the American Southwest and green the American Southwest, I mean, that would be the type of mega Earth project that I think we should be doing instead of trying to build bombs to blow up the Mideast. The world leadership is completely off kilter with what they should be doing. 180 degrees away from what should be going on this planet.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. We have this COP21 meeting in Paris here in Europe in December. There's certainly a lot of grassroots action building up, I think, all around the world to demand sensibility from our governments, because we're looking at financial investment and financial gain. We're even trying to commoditize nature and value ecosystems. I mean, completely crazy. How can we value someone's home, someone's life, So we've got to change. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, in the United States, and I'm sure most other places, we have what's called the Environmental Protection Agency, And what they do is they have what they call allowable, permitted pollution. And so, and they say, well, this is the annual dose that's permitted, but they don't account for accumulation. And so over the decades, et cetera, all of these things build up. Yeah. So it's really condoned pollution by the government. And, you really can't have any pollution.
No, exactly. Bioaccumulation, horror story. Yeah. Now, I've heard the EPA referred to as the Environmental Pollution Agency.
Yeah, exactly. And they,
seems appropriate.
Things like, for example, pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals typically don't break down. So when people, they pass through their body, goes into the water system, goes into the water table, and it's building up and accumulating.
Yeah.
Then people are ingesting this through the water intake, and that's why the pharmaceuticals don't work, because people are constantly taking them in a sense.
Yeah. We're in dangerous territory. Massive use of antibiotics in animal farming. Definitely dangerous territory.
Yeah, and so the only solution is getting back to a point where your food comes relatively locally, and of course you have to import and transport. But they say the average head of lettuce now can travel up to 9,000 miles before it's consumed.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
This is what's killing the planet. It's the actual transportation of the fruit is emitting more pollution than anything. It's incredible how dirty the fuel is they use in these ships.
Indeed, yes.
Appalling. It's like Sudbury. Like we talked about this on the previous show about the stack in Sudbury that was killing the whole town. It was emitting so much acid rain and sulfur. And actually, my cousin was one of the people who led the protest to get this changed, and they put in a super stack, and it allowed them to precipitate out a lot of the sulfur. And it basically what it did too is it just spread the toxins out over a larger area, so it didn't kill anything. But now we get all the way from Ottawa, 300 miles away, we get their acid rain. So, but I mean, it's a better solution than doing nothing. But these ships are literally putting out 240 times all the pollution on the planet on land is going directly into the oceans. And David, this is a big problem I have with a lot of the people in the green movement is that they don't acknowledge this problem. Okay, and they think that the oceans are being destroyed by something as minuscule in size and power as CO2 release, when the real issue is the shipping of the goods. 90,000 ships putting crap into the oceans, and not just, but it is what's killing them. This is that's your problem.
That's something I've said too. Is that
release of CO2, and this is I don't know if I should share it with you. I wrote something about this new conference coming up. Someone has to address this in the quote green movement. I was just introduced to this problem, I don't know, about 6 months ago, and I've done more research on it. The guy's absolutely true. One of these ships, these huge container ships, which everything now is shipped. Nothing's made locally. The magnets of power, the big ones are the oil and gas companies. They've created this system where everything has to be made offshore so it can be transported across the planet so they can make money on shipping and transportation. It's an absolute death sentence for the planet.
Well, one of the oil that comes from the Mideast, one of the reasons they insist on getting it from there is because about 10% of that is consumed in bringing it over to the United States, where it comes into New Orleans or one of the other super ports like in Texas, where it's refined. But that's big money. Just like in the coal industry, the railroad industry related to coal is a huge part of that industry.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the lobby. And, it's like the guy that used to shoe horses. It's like, hey, you got to get a new occupation. We're not all riding horses anymore. It's like these changes have to come in. And I think, like I was saying earlier, this movement, and I think we're at least I was underestimating the number of people that actually just stepped off the bus and walked away. I think it's in the probably tens of millions now and growing very quickly.
Yeah.
Getting some noise here in the background, guys.
Not here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe somebody's animal's hanging out.
Uh-huh.
Mine are all
Dog,
sleeping.
David?
No, me, I'm fine. No, the dogs are all asleep.
Oh, are they?
Yep,
It's by
they're
5
snoozing
in the
on my
morning
bed.
right now.
All right. Okay, it's cleared up. So, David, are you aware of anybody who's addressing this issue of the incredible pollution caused by shipping of goods all over the planet?
Not directly so. I mean, we're aware of the Pacific Gyre, some size of Texas full of plastic and the horror of plastics, but
well, that's part of the problem. Yeah, and all these cruise ships are. I have a friend who used to go on cruise ships like 3-4 times a year. He said it's disgusting. He says at 3 a.m. he'd get up and watch them throw all the garbage into the ocean.
Really, that's very bad behavior. Yeah.
That's what's creating these zones.
I was flying out of one of the Caribbean islands a couple of years ago, and over on the backside of the island, there was a big bay, and there were 3 cruise ships in there, and they were all letting the toilet waste into that bay. And there were 3 streamers coming out of the back of those ships, and I thought, oh my God, and you could see it from the air, and they were tucked in this back little bay where probably nobody could see them. But I mean, can you imagine a couple thousand people on those boats, and they're just dumping that into the ocean?
Yeah, I mean, it's criminal, really. I mean, it needs to be criminal. It would be good if it was criminal.
Yeah, just because they don't have a place to put it. I mean, it's incredible. But
what infuriates me is they want to spy on each and every person on the planet when they should have people spying on these boats. I mean, arrest the right criminals. I mean, the average person is not destroying the planet. It's these major corporations running these cruise lines and these corporations that are that are shipping everything everywhere. I mean, honest to God. I mean, anyways, I hope the issue is addressed at the conference. I have a feeling it won't be. David, I have some major concerns about the green movement in general. I think it's missing the boat.
Missing the boat. Yeah, I think you're right.
Still, on the serious, like the issue with, we talked about this before, and I know James knows about geoengineering because he used to advise them on how to do it. Because of his background in understanding. He has a very incredible understanding of how the Earth acts like a battery, right, James? Maybe you can.
Correct.
Much better at these technical things than I am, but basically what they're using is the electrical fields of the planet to control the weather.
Correct.
This is the problem, my friend, over in Spain. It isn't the release of CO2.
Well, there's an awful lot going on there. I think the general breakdown of our systems is attributable to many causes. We're not being very clever as humans. We're not looking after our environment. We just got the world upside down. Nature gives, and humans capitalize and don't give. It's kind of back to front. So we got to learn to share and care. And to give up this sense of, I want everything for myself and have my castle and my servants and my BMW and my Rolls Royce. That I think that age is coming very fast to an end. In fact, I hope that it will be considered to be bad news to be rich. Kind of a minus point in life to have too much money.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, exactly, because we tend in modern society to glorify the rich people or the Hollywood stars or whatever. And really the judge that we should use on the wellness of the world is the poorest person.
Yep.
And not the richest.
Yep. The poorest people are often, strangely and paradoxically, can be some of the easiest going and some of the happiest and most generous people. Whereas
Right.
we find that the richest people tend to be rather the opposite, very closed, not very happy, not satisfied, and addicted to earning more because the world feels empty for them. Not all, of course. I've worked with many rich people and many poor people, so not all cases fit the same kind of box. But as a general, I find the really rich people, they're not having a quality of life, for instance, which we can have in this eco-village, where we have the sense of freedom and community. Really important.
Exactly. Yeah. When I eat or drink water or whatever I do, just my daily routine, I know that I have food that I couldn't buy in a grocery store.
Yeah.
You couldn't find it at any price.
Yeah.
And so, having a proper mineral balance in your water is very important. How many people even think about that? But, I think that with the world's population as it is, actually
Hey, guys, pick this up after the break.
Okay.
Nature, Brian Porter with guest James McCanney. Welcome back to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, and I have two very interesting guests on this evening, James McCanney and David Frederick Dene, and we are discussing some of the key environmental issues that we're dealing with on the planet. James is an engineer that's coming up with some solutions. And so where do we leave off, gentlemen? I'm just I'm drawing a bit of a blank here.
What I was
James
just
was
about
chatting.
to mention was that if we gave land to people, and there is plenty of land around the world, and the people started to develop it for sustainability, just using that alone. And I know that there's projects, I know the people at Finhorn talk about this, that they're actually being employed, or I don't know if employed is the right word, but they're being commissioned by some of the African countries to start eco-villages there and show the people how to live in a sustainable manner. That the world really has plenty to offer. And then also realize that communication, education, social values, things like that, work those in with the same thing, because modern society is really a blight on the earth. It can't continue. So, I mean, we have to take, and then what do we do with the other 3 to 4 billion people that are living hand to mouth in the dirt out there? So the globalists think killing them off is a good idea. Not, when there are really plenty of resources. And the other reality is as these people become successful, the world population will actually start to reduce.
Yeah. Well, we've got a mass migration problem here in Europe with there are wars in the Middle East with Syria,
Yes.
Lebanon, Yemen. Literally thousands of people coming across the Mediterranean. 3,000, I think, have died this year. The numbers are absolutely extraordinary.
This is all by design.
Well, tens of thousands, and the weapons come from England, come from France, come from America. And then Europe saying, well, what are we going to do about these refugees? Well, they're caused by the weaponry. They're caused by warfare. And these people are coming over with their smartphones. Most important thing, smartphone, so that they can use WhatsApp and send their GPS positions. They can send pictures of themselves back into Syria or Lebanon or Yemen, and then also amongst themselves find out which is the border they can get through. I mean, we're in a mega point of transformation in Europe. How does the European community deal with 1 million refugees? This is the biggest refugee movement since the end of the Second World War. It's an extraordinary situation and unparalleled, I'd say.
Have any come knocking on your door, David?
There are a lot of people coming into Spain, but luckily I'm living in a place which seems very inhospitable. There's something in that. We're in an oasis in the desert, and it's great. We're really not that well known, although we do have, in theory, great protections. So for people to come here and think to set up a life here, it does take a serious commitment. You know, we are really in the desert, and we have to be on the ball. There's not much kind of buffer space. We need to get it right. Whatever we do, we need to get it right.
Yeah.
There's no margin for error.
Yeah.
Not a great deal.
Guys, 40 years ago, I started talking to the student movement in Canada about this problem. We're part of a military-industrial complex. And that if we don't deal with this problem, it's going to get worse and worse. And, at some point, almost every country on the planet is going to be at war because this is what they want. The bottom line of the military-industrial complex is destruction, reconstruction, and the use of arms. This is their business. This is what they do best. They ferment conflict, and they want wars. Right now, on this planet, there's 66 countries that have wars ongoing. In India alone, there are 40 places of conflict in one country.
Wow.
People don't realize, because we don't really look at the world in one from a globalist perspective. Very few people do. And it's honest to God, I mean, it's hard to catalog all this stuff and stay on top of it all. But this is really what we're dealing with, gentlemen, is this military-industrial complex. It's creating all of these problems.
Yeah, they just had an interview with Merkel, who's the Chancellor of Germany, and it's very clear that she is insistent on flooding Germany with the refugees. And of course, you know, what do you do with these people? That's one thing, but they're not coming there because they want to. They're being forced. I mean, they don't have an option. But the forces that are moving these people in the world are just insane criminal activity is going on.
There's a lot of militarized people coming in with these people. This is what's happening, James, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's not good. The United States is being flooded with also, and
they're setting up little armies, little terrorist sects in all these countries, and they have control over them. I mean, people, please wake up. See the bigger trends here.
The United States was, there's probably, and the official number of Mexicans, illegal alien Mexicans living in the United States is 5 million. That's the official number. There's more than that in East LA. I mean, nationwide, there's probably 40 to 50 million. Yeah. And they're having babies like crazy because they think if they have a baby, they can stay here, which is insane. You know, I mean, they're having, so they've destroyed the economy of California. They were working on Arizona, and Arizona said no. So it's a giant disaster. And I talk to these people. I know a lot of people who are from Mexico. I used to live there myself. And I asked them, do you want to be in the United States? I mean, and I said, if you had a good job in Mexico, would you go back there? The first thing they say is, well, that ain't going to happen. I said, well, no, really, if there were, would you go back? And they all say yes. You know, and that's the case for all these other people. They would go to their home country in a New York second if they had something to be there for and there wasn't bombs blowing up on their every street corner. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, absolutely, James. Yeah. Also, like, I was reading just recently studies done on this and the economic impacts of refugees, such as we got at the moment, and actually it can be a great benefit because these people, they've used their life savings. It would cost €1,000 to get a boat across from Libya. These are really what were well-to-do people, an awful lot of them, with a desire to start business, to start life, to restart their lives. And at the end of the day, it can be very beneficial to a country. I'm just back from England. I've just spent 4 days in England. And going to bars and pubs, I ask people who are working behind the bar where they come from. It's Albania, Poland. And I say to them, hey, well done, guys. You've got it together. Because they're taking jobs that maybe other people don't want to have. And very often they're entrepreneurs who are running their design shops in Syria or hairdressers or hardware shops or whatever, and their homes and their lives are destroyed, and so somewhere to come, somewhere to start up again, and this is the way I see it. And the BBC are brilliant because they go to the beaches of Greece and say, well, where do you come from? And we get the stories, and they're pretty horrendous. You know, it's a very bad time to be alive in the Middle East at the moment. The ISIS, you know, death squads, really bad, really, really, really bad.
Well, the whole world is an extremely dangerous place to live these days.
It's true.
Or to travel, and especially, say, if you're an American, it can be a very dangerous place to travel or to be any place.
Do you find yourself kind of singled out as an American if you're traveling?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, no question about it.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of Americans say they're Canadians, James. They get a lot better reception.
I can't talk like you guys, eh?
Come on.
I'll never pass for a Canadian.
You'll sound Canadian anytime. It's a big country. There's no official accent here unless you're French. Yeah.
I mean, our fear in Europe, just in mentioning refugees again, is the fact that most of these people coming over are of the Muslim faith. And there's a kind of a paranoia thinking that all Muslims are bad people. But actually, when we get down to the basics, the Quran and the Bible and the Torah, they're all the same book. So we've got the Jewish religion, we've got the Muslim religion, we've got the Christian religion. They're all coming from this so-called Old Testament. That's kind of an interesting point. And in the book of Muhammad, written like in 600 AD, peace and love and kindness and caring are the same as they are in the Christian Bible, the New Testament. So these religious factions of fundamental madness, well, that's not really what the Quran was about, nor the Christian Bible. You know, very strange behavior going on. What do you think of that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can tell you what I think. What I think is that, David, all we're doing is we're giving in to the dictates of the military-industrial complex. We have to stop giving into their dictates, because I've been posting about, there's a guy named Dr. Truott. He's another host on this station. The guy is actually quite phenomenal, I think, in his understanding of world events and what's actually happening. What's happening in the Middle East right now is the Israelis are trying to basically expand their sphere of influence. And with the Americans, they're basically taking over the Middle East. And this is very detrimental to Europe, because they say all these people are going to be coming there, all the refugees are going to be leaving, and it's not going to be a positive thing to take in so many people so quickly. And as I said earlier, some of these people, probably 1 in 100 or maybe 1 in 1,000, are themselves part of this military-industrial complex. And they are going to, whenever they are told to, they are going to create problems in Europe. I don't know if you have ever been to the United States, but every city in the United States has its, quote, ghetto, which is basically a war zone. And what's the average kill rate in the U.S.? 30,000 people a year or something with weapons. I mean, Europe's a beautiful place. I love Europe. I'd hate to see it become like the United States. But you see, this is part of their plan. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm giving up on humanity, but man, we have to start dealing with other things other than the, quote, green movement and the rights of nature. We have to start looking at the undercurrent, the causes of all these problems. What created this huge move towards toxifying the environment? Well, I'll tell you, one of the main things was the oil companies. 100 years ago, they kicked all the hemp farmers off the land and said, no, we want to make everything with oil now. And hemp was so much better for the environment. It was natural.
Yeah, of course. I grew about 2,000 plants here of industrial hemp just to see how it grew, and really people were very interested. I was on the radio about this and saying, yeah, it grows really easy. It's really not difficult, not too much water, and very few inputs. Then with very few inputs, we get polymers of plastic. We get all sorts of health products. And in Colorado, we get $77 million tax and only $40 million on alcohol. So legalize it, I say.
Arik Rice was on my show, I think about a month ago. He made an incredible movie called Drug Lord. And I didn't I knew that hemp was great, but he laid it all out. He said, Brian, we went through this toxic industrial revolution when we could have used hemp as the basis for the industrial revolution instead of oil. But the people like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all the powerful families that were invested in and also lumber too. Lumber was a big part of the change. People wanted to make paper out of lumber because they bought all the lumber. All these like the I forget his name, Hirsch I think was his name. So this is what happened. This is what's created these problems. And like I say, unless we deal with the underlying economic and militaristic forces, nothing is going to change on this planet. We can have all the protests and whatever we want. People have to come together, see the undercurrent. As Dr. Ott says, the story behind the story. We have to see the powerful toxifying undercurrents of these problems, or nothing's going to change.
Yeah, it's a really difficult problem because these people have guns. They have the wherewithal to manufacture, and they have the wherewithal to create problems every place to have their wars.
Plus, they control the media. Problem. They control the media and let themselves off the hook. This is the worst thing about their power and control. Yeah, it's a very difficult problem, gentlemen. It's a very difficult problem. And this is my conclusion is this. You're doing the right thing. I'm getting there myself, but we have to create these arcs of sanity, these eco-villages, these places where things are done locally. And then hopefully, through like something like the 100th monkey syndrome, other people will say, hey, I'm dying in this system. I want a place to live that's safe. I want a place where the food is healthy, et cetera, and then more and more people will want to do these things, and will eventually starve these people out of existence. But see, what David's doing and what you're doing, James, is this is the solution, is to actually reject the system altogether and say, no, I'm going to do it my way locally. This is the most powerful solution of anyone.
That's why I call the wing generator replacement energy, because it replaces the central power companies. And until you do that, and then get to the point where you can replace oil and have electric cars that literally run off of free electricity from the wind for just the cost of maintenance of these facilities, then you're hitting right at one of the core issues. Then you can have clean water, then you can reduce pollution, then you can get rid of these people, because oil is a form of control. And that's why I'm doing the wing generator, not only to provide clean energy, but to destroy that system you're talking about.
Nothing has been worse for the planet than the oil industry. Man, it's connected to everything. The drug industry, the chemical industry, the fertilization industry, the GMO. Everything is connected back to the oil industry. The Seven Sisters.
Yeah, it is. It is. When you buy a hot dog at a ball game, it's $3 or $4. I mean, it's really worth about 4 cents, and that's what the farmer's getting. It's insane, the energy cost that's tacked into everything you do and buy. Yeah.
Well, we're using 90 million barrels of oil a day. I think that's the output. And so if we think of 90 million barrels a day and multiply that by 50 cents a barrel now, man, that's the heroin fix of the capitalist society we live in. And if we take that away, there's big fear. What happens to the stock market? What happens to pension funds? What happens? But we've got to do it. I absolutely agree. Because when we're free and we have free energy, then, we can use this artificial intelligence and whatever and have freedom to create rather than be slaves of industry, to be able to operate as as realized human beings as opposed to robots, stimulus response machines. And I see that, on the west coast of America. I spent some time there, and seeing how places like Esalen sprang up. There was disposable income. People started to look at new ways of living. And I think it's really spread from the west coast of America all around the world. We find that everywhere now. The people saying there's a different way to live. We must live in a different way. We must have reverence for nature, reverence for creation, and an awareness that we need nature. Nature doesn't need us. We need nature. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
my kind of...
Well, yeah, the issue is that we can have a good life, we can be educated, we can be social, we can travel, we can have communications, all of the things we do today without the 40-hour-a-week job, without the running back and forth every day with 2 cars up and down the highway. All of those things are totally unnecessary, and the evening news keeps everybody pinned to the TV on the stock market, the housing crisis, and the war in the Mideast, and this, on and on, insurance failures.
Let's ask David this question then, because he's living in an eco-village. How many hours a week do you spend meeting your basic needs, your food, your water, your energy needs? How many hours a week do you spend doing that?
Wow, Brian, that's a very difficult one, in the sense that every day is different. At the moment, I'm upgrading my photovoltaic system. We have some work to do on the irrigation line. We have the garden to keep going. It's a constant, full-on life where we're responsible for everything. So,
but do you think you're working less than somebody working on a regular job? I hate to say it. Most people aren't working 40. Most people are working 60 to 80 hours a week to survive.
Yeah. I would say, if we said 4 hours a day, say something like that, that'd be about reasonable.
Yeah.
And, for myself, I spend quite a lot of time in communication, and I've got a really good team of people around me who I say, hey, okay. And I give people as much responsibility as they can carry. And in that way, then people who come and stay here, they begin to find out who they are. And it's this concept of being a realized human being, to be able to find out what gifts we have, find out who we are, and then realize that life is not about slavery to an industrial complex model. It's about doing what we feel fulfilled doing, and then we're happy, and then we have quality.
I call it tri-energetics: love nature, love source, and love each other and yourself. Yeah, this is really what life should be about.
Yep, and that's it. But before I came here, I was working in Austria. I was a health practitioner, and I would work 20 hours a week, hands-on, deep tissue body work, and really my job was to give unconditional love 20 hours a week. And 20 hours a week, absolutely perfect. Too much, and then, my ability to concentrate and be there would then start to drop. And 20 hours a week, plenty of time for snowboarding, skiing, social life. Very satisfactory. Very good. I like it.
Beautiful. Okay, we're almost running out of time here, guys. James mentioned something. I don't know if he wants to chat about it now, but you had a new crowdfunding thing going on.
Just quickly, it's a system for people with smartphone, tablets, or PCs to replace Android and Windows with a new operating system that is bug-free, virus-free, cannot be hacked into, has its own encryption package for communication, whether it's text, data, or voice. And this will be coming in a crowdfunding package very shortly, so just keep tuned to my webpage for that announcement. I thought it would be already posted, but it's not. Not all the pieces are put together for the start of the crowdfunding. But that's coming very shortly, so keep an eye out for that. And that's a development program, and once it's released, the plan is to give it away for free, for simply the cost of the overhead of installation. in managing the program. But the idea is that then there will be licensing for developers who will then develop all of the same applications that you use today, except they won't have the NSA spooking around in all of your data. Yeah, so it'll be a way for people with those devices to have complete autonomy and independent from NSA snooping.
James, are you? Is this allowed in all countries? I hate to say it, but there's so many regulations on telecommunications and whatnot.
Well, no, it's
instances where you need to have these things approved.
Many people. This is for devices that are not related to telephone companies. I forgot to mention the other thing is you will no longer have a telephone company. This will replace Verizon and the other companies because you will be doing all of your communications through this intelligent device. We now have devices that don't need the phone company. They just forgot to tell you that.
So it's going to be Wi-Fi based, or will it be mobile as well?
No, Wi-Fi based, and there's Wi-Fi every place right now. So, but or you can also plug in with a cable. But anything that attaches to a router, but it's internet-based, cloud-based.
Yeah. That really makes sense. The black phone, for instance, just come out. That's not allowed to be shipped to, for instance, Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. The rest of the world, more or less, okay. But that's a model which will cost €650. It sounds like your model, James, is going to be much more in the more easy to pay for.
Well, you don't even have to buy a new phone. You can use your current smartphone. What you're doing is replacing the operating system, the Android or Windows operating system, with this. And but it'll be built so it cannot be snooped.
Brilliant.
And so, basically any smartphone device of recent caliber will work.
I think that's a major breakthrough, James. I bet there's going to be a big pickup on that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people are upset that everything we say and do is now known by government.